This is meeting 65. So we've been meeting 65 times. I'll go ahead and turn off the camera. And so just so everyone knows, my group is trying to get approvals to go to the SmartNIC Summit in San Jose, June 15th, 13th through 15th. So we're still trying to work on that. I don't know if anyone else is planning to go, but we're trying. So what I've got on my screen today is these are the notes from last week. Can you guys see?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, cool. And so last week we talked about the protobuf PR, and we were going to have someone check the Excel sheet to see if that worked out. Chris, did you happen to check that?
Yeah. I downloaded that. It looked good. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Downloaded and looked good. Okay, great. And then for PR 358, we did have this update here to update. I guess this is the header or the something. And then I went ahead and merged this one. So 358 is merged. And then we have this very large conversation we talked about. And this PR is going, this 336, the tags is going to be polished in another one. 359 is what he's going to open to polish it, Z. But it looks like we want to talk a little bit more about ACL tags in relation to this PR. Is that right, Vincent?
Yep.
Yeah. And then that's really all I had on the agenda today, unless you guys had another item you wanted to talk about. So I guess we could get started with this one then.
Right. So I picked it up and trying to integrate that, and the implementation, the generated side APIs, are kind of totally different from what the HLD kind of describes. What the HLD describes is a tag is a set of prefix. It's a prefix list. It's a set of prefix, and it's v4 or v6. Perfectly fine. And I believe also that the ACL could include a tag with a list of prefix and or just a list, its own set of prefixes via the current information that we have. Now, when I pull that and when I pull this commit and I look at the side generation, well, it's not, the tag is not defined like the HLD does. It's basically an IP prefix can be added, can be assigned a tag or multiple tags. So the tag is an attribute of the prefix, not the other way around. And then suddenly in the ACL rule, the tag now is ternary. So all this implementation there, the generation from the P4 code is totally different from what was, from the requirement description in the HLD. I think that's a problem.
Is that this section here you're referencing?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Hey, Vincent, I'd just like to add to what you just said. I think the problem is really, the root of the problem is trying to like shoehorn this feature into P4. I mean, my understanding of the feature is that a tag is essentially like a macro. It has a set of prefixes, and it just sort of expands those prefixes as if they're part of the list of prefixes of the rule. And in order to generate the psi out of P4, like the P4 implementation of how to match on a tag involves doing, an LPM on the tag and then using the tag as part of the key to the ACL. And it's created sort of a logical implementation that really doesn't match the behavior of the definition of what the tag was intended to do. Like in my mind, the tag is an SDN controller convenience for being able to scale the programming of a large set of rules where like the same sets of prefixes are being used over and over. Like it wasn't intended to be some kind of complicated
If the data plane wants to,
shoehorning
use it,
into
it can. But if it doesn't need to, the
Yeah.
data plane might not use tags at all in the data plane.
Sure, exactly, and and some might not. But the implementation of the P4 code like separates out like as part of the key, the tag, and the IP address in the packet. So you do a lookup on the IP address of the packet, you might get a tag, and then the key has both of them in it, and so that creates sort of like for the ACL lookup, it's like an and, like if this field matches and that field matches and the next field matches, then the rule matches. But like it's not really an and that you want to do on the tag and then the other prefixes that might have been programmed as part of the rule. It's more like an or. And so like it's just the way this is implemented just really doesn't match, we don't think, the intent of the feature. And I think even if what is programmed is acceptable in some way, I think it's actually constraining certain optimizations maybe that might be possible when it comes to doing, a data plane implementation.
It also
this makes sense. I think what happens is last time what we talked about, that this is more like and that makes something.
Sorry, Hanif, you're breaking up a lot, Hanif.
And if people are familiar with oh, sorry, I'm passing through a dead zone, looks like. So I'll just stop and then
start over, yeah.
I'll just make my comment.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I was saying is that, that if people in implement, I view it,
we might need you to start over after your dead zone.
I guess, destination IP addresses to say that. Yeah. Okay.
I think we might need you to say that whole thing over after you get through your dead zone. Is that right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
The other thing I wanted to add while he drives to better cell coverage is that the granular, you handle a tag like a list of prefixes, and when you remove a tag, you remove all the prefixes. Now the API that got defined because it kind of turned things around, you can add multiple tags to an IP, but when you remove, the only remove API that gets created is remove that prefix. So basically you have to scan all the tags and you cannot, when you remove that IP, you basically remove that IP from all the tag. So A, it's more work, and B, it's not the granularity that I think the CLI was intended to be anyway. I mean, you handle tag and prefixes like you handle groups and rules within the group. It's exactly the same concept. So what was implemented in the SI API just A, doesn't match the requirement, the HLD, but it doesn't even make sense from a practicality anyway, from a configuration standpoint, in my opinion.
Are you saying, Vincent, you think that there should be a SI API that says from this tag, remove this prefix and only remove it from that tag?
That's not how SI works anyway. When you remove an object, right? So you remove the key here is the prefix. The way it's defined now, the key is the prefix and the tag is just an attribute of it. When you remove that object, you remove the prefix, basically you remove its association to tags, to whatever list of tags it was joined to, but it doesn't make sense. The delete is you delete the object, like you delete an ENI, like you delete an inbound route. You never delete an attribute from an object.
What control plane API does Microsoft want?
Association between an IP and a tag is expressed in a different way, and from when I checked the pull request, I understand the main reason being that one IP can be used in multiple tags. So if you have another way of expressing this so that this condition will be satisfied, same IP or same prefix may appear in multiple tags. I would like to see that. I think that was the most straightforward way to implement it.
But
Yeah,
it's got a lot of side effects that John mentioned, and you end up basically with something that is not what it's supposed to be.
What are the side effects?
Okay, when you say like that was like the way, like the best way to implement it in P4, that maybe was the way to implement it. But like if you're thinking about it just from an SDN controller point of view, you'd say, I have a tag. This is the list of IP prefixes that are members of that tag. Then you could say, I have a different tag. Here's the list of IP addresses for the different tag. The same address might be used in each of those tags. It doesn't constrain that. But it's easier and makes more sense from the perspective of the SDN controller to think of a tag as a list of prefixes, not to think of a prefix as having some set of tags associated with it.
And that there should be an operation that says for this tag, remove this prefix later if you want to edit.
Well, yeah,
the
or
tag
remove
list.
or remove the whole tag.
There is such an operation. It's changing the bit vector.
But the reason why there's a bit vector in the first place is because of the ACL implementation of P4. Like it didn't even need to be a bit vector. That's the point I'm making. It's like we're letting P4 basically control how the control plane works.
No, that's why we have Workagent. Control plane exposes API to the controller, which is different.
But the
from,
API is being
side.
generated from the P4. And
That's
so
not what's exposed to the controller again. That's why we have Workagent to do the translation. So do you have an alternative? I'm trying to understand if there is an alternative proposed.
But sorry, maybe I'm trying to understand. Okay, so is the problem on the side API? The concern is on the side API?
The
I saw we
concern is
talk about
the side API doesn't match at all the HLD, what's described in the HLD.
which no. Okay, so there's a reason why the Workagent exists, right? So, but let's try to understand what is the problem for that. The side API. I still don't get it. I mean, the side API you can assign a prefix to a tag, right? So it's
No. The
Okay,
side API, the way it's described is
people are not even. I think there is the fundamental problem that I see is that do we even understand, what tag, it really means here, right? I think I see a lot of different, or at least I'm trying to see that, I'm observing that there are conflicting understandings of the tag. If people understand what the ECMP groups are, right? I don't know whether people have the familiarity with that in certain implementations of ASICs, where ECMP groups generally mean, this is an indirection. This is something shared across multiple different, destinations, the routing table, right? So ECMP group is used as a set of next hops, okay? And it is shared across multiple destinations if they happen to basically have the same ECMP group that they point to. When something basically, some destination wants to point to some other set of next hops, then they end up actually creating a new ECMP group that may overlap with the previous one, but it is unique in the sense that, hey, it's a different set. So in this case, what happens is that if people are talking about sharing, should we even call it a tag? Because there's some confusion. Should we call it a prefix groups, right? Or prefix group, and then it is shared across all, the rules where they happen to have the same set that they want to really use. And if somebody wants to delete or add anything, it means that they may end up actually creating a new group, okay, which will be unique in its members that it can basically be used. Does that actually jive with the understanding that, I have? And now when you have indirection, I agree that, hey, if the underlying implementation, hardware implementation does not support it, they can expand it and use it as, full set of prefixes and not have, separate indirection of a table. But if they do, they can use it as an indirection to save the, their space within their implementation. as a space saving part, because this is where we're all, going towards, that we want to save the space or table space or the memory space within the implementation. So is it not true?
I think what you described, I think it describes sort of the problem, but I think it wasn't really to optimize any kind of memory space necessarily. That's each vendor can decide what they want to do. I think it's more that, like, for example, let's say I have a set of servers, set of VMs that are email servers, another set of VMs that are spam servers, and I want to create like a bunch of ACL rules where I want to be able to say, hey, the spam servers are allowed to talk to the email servers, and this group is allowed to talk to that group. And so it's just a way of like reducing, from a control plane perspective, having to reference the full set of IP addresses every time you want to create a rule. It's a macro. In my mind, it's like a macro that you could, like you said, like do a lookup, on an IP address to get what tags are associated with it. Or you could just expand the macro in every single rule that references the macro. And that's like up to the implementer to decide, right? But like the idea of the tag, I think, is just that it's a macro that represents a set of prefixes. And one tag does not have to be orthogonal from another tag. Like you could have multiple tags that have overlapping prefixes.
Yes, agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, that is correct. And we have discussed it last week, right? So I think just to add to Gohan's point, what is the concern? Maybe I'm also missing that.
The generated side APIs are not that at all.
Okay, so can someone show that generated side API so that everybody on the same page?
Yeah, I can show because I have
I'm
it.
going to stop presenting then, Vincent.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's all generated stuff, although, you could obviously get it from the LPM. So the LPM lookup that P4 decides to do is basically this. So at the end of the day, the tag is your key, your object is that prefix, and the tag is an attribute, as opposed to the reverse, which is similar to what an ACL group is compared to ACL rules.
Yeah, but it says tag map, not a tag, right?
I don't care what it says.
Hold on. Can we increase the font a little bit more? It's a little bit too small. Okay, all right.
So
let's try to understand.
I don't care it's a map or not. This is 32-bit, and actually we have what, 4K tags or something like that. So what you encode, if you encode anything in there, it's not even the point right now. The point is the tag is the attribute of a prefix, not the other way around, which is what the HLDs describe, which makes sense based on what we all talked about so far. So you should have the object should be the tag, but it's not. The object is the prefix, and you add tag as an attribute to it. The side effect of that, the secondary side effect, is when you remove something, you cannot just, I don't think you can remove a tag from a prefix because there's no API for that anyway. But the bottom line is this is totally reverse.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that's a reverse, right? So what operation we cannot do? Sorry, can you try to explain again?
Forget about this. That's just secondary. The first part is it's reversed. The tag is an attribute of the prefix, as opposed to what it's supposed to be, where you have a tag object, like you have an ACL group object, and you have, with the ACL group, you got a bunch of rules associated with it.
Okay, no, yeah, no, I understand it's reversed, but what's the problem for it? I mean, they can both express the same thing, right? So, a tag that contains a list of prefix. It's in terms of expressing the intention, it's the same capabilities. So what's the problem for that?
No, because when you
what capability lose here?
So one capability that you lose is you should be able to remove a tag entirely.
Okay,
remove a tag. You can't.
Okay,
no, you can't.
Can you explain what do you mean by removing a tag?
the object is how do you remove a prefix from a how do you remove a prefix from a tag list?
Oh, that one is easy, right? So you just delete this prefix
Well,
object, right?
when you do that, you delete the prefix from all the tags it's part of, because the tag here.
Okay, no. You can do an update API where you just update the attribute of this tag, or for the tag that is belong to this prefix, right? So you say the tag is a attribute of this prefix. So in that tag, there's a it's a map, right? So you just remove that particular tag from that map.
What does that mean? It's a map. It's a 32-bit map.
No, I think forget about it's a map. I think you can think of it as a list. Let's say it's a list.
Oh, right, list. Yeah, right? So
it's a list, and then you remove that thing because Vincent, I think the idea here is that there are APIs. There are going to be APIs which will allow you to manipulate the tag. Okay, you can update the tag as Guhan is saying by saying, okay, remove this prefix from this tag. That is going to be the API, right? And you can use it to attribute it. Now, by removing the prefix, what you mentioned that remove from all the tags, well, you have to have that separate API to remove it from all the tags, to say any and all the tags remove this prefix, right? So those are the two separate APIs that you can probably, you can't say that, okay, I want to have one API and say, oh, remove this prefix and remove this prefix from all the tags, right? So I think there are you can have two APIs. Why does it have to be just one, right?
Slow down, please. Slow down. There's no API. The API you described, there's no tag API. All these here.
Then we need it. Then we need that API.
Let me see. Let me tell you why. Because the key here, the object is the prefix. So when you create a destination tag, you give it a prefix and a set of attributes. When you remove the prefix. So you remove everything, the list after that.
When you do a set API, set API can do that.
When you do a set, you can add to the list. How do you remove?
Oh, sure. I mean, no. This set API is going back, right? So this set API, I believe if you go up, this set API allows you to set that particular attribute to a different value.
So so the tag that you pass is a tag list. Okay.
Yeah. Then you can, for example, initially, let's say the tag list have 2 tags, and then the set API allows you to reset it, right? So you want to set to 1 tag, and you set to 1 tag, right? So yeah.
But
yeah, it is kind of a replacing the previous one.
Yeah, but it's totally orthogonal from what the HLD says, and on top of that, the tag. Hold on. Let me just finish one sentence. For some reason, the tag is now a ternary value in the ACL rule.
Yeah,
which may be a different issue.
Yeah. I think there's 2 separate issues here, Vincent. Right? Can the APIs express the intended feature? Maybe they can if you can modify the attribute of a prefix to like add and remove tags to it. The secondary issue.
Sure. No, it's already it's already there.
Okay.
What you said is already there. Yeah,
okay. So I'm saying there's 2 issues. One is, does the SCI API express the feature of tags? And maybe it does. You say it does, and it probably does. Okay. The second issue is that the implementation of the tag feature in the P4 creates a behavior that's not the intended behavior.
Sorry, that part I don't understand. I mean, first, the P4 pipeline is a reference pipeline. It just say that, okay, this is what we need, right? So it doesn't have to. You don't have to implement it like that.
No. I agree with you there, but that generates the SCI API. That's the problem.
Yeah. So I'm trying to understand what's the problem of the SCI API here, right?
So this is in the ACL rule here. The tag now, you got a mask, is ternary for some reason. That was never described. The ACL rule was supposed to be a list of tags.
I think it's ternary because each rule may or may not include each tag, right? So like if a tag is not included in the rule, then that tag would be like don't cared in that rule. Okay, that's why it's ternary, Vincent, I think. But the problem is that the lookup, the ACL lookup isn't just about the tag. The ACL, the rule itself can also have its own list of prefixes. And like I was saying,
but we didn't. That is also allowed, right? So.
Right, and if you look at the way the P4 is implemented, okay, the ACL is a key made up of fields, right? And logically, in order to match a rule, each field has to match in an and fashion. Field 1 has to match the rule, field 2 has to match the rule, field 3 has to match the rule. If all the fields of a rule match, then the rule matches, okay? If you have the tag as one field of the rule, and you have a list of prefixes as a second field of the rule, you could match on the tag, but not match on the list of prefixes. Or you could match on the list of prefixes, but not match on the tag. So it's created like an and of the tag field in the prefix list that the rule can have. And that's that behavior is not correct. You know, it's just not a correct behavior to say that it's an and of those two fields. It's really the or of the match of those two fields.
The fields can be empty, right?
They
So
can be,
yeah.
but if they're not, if you have tags and prefixes, then the ACL doesn't work.
That's up to control plane.
No, but that's the defined behavior of a rule is that you can mix tags and prefixes. I mean,
no, that's a northbound. We need to differentiate the northbound and southbound, right? So the northbound, I don't know if the controller will send us a rule that has both tag and prefix, but even they do, we the occasion will separate them and put them into two different rules and
okay, all right. If everybody agrees on that, then it's fine. But it's not like nothing describes that. There's just some P4 behavior there. And by the way, like some data plane implementations wouldn't need those separated into two rules. So it's creating like a suboptimal, like the P4 implementation is creating, behavioral model is creating like a suboptimal implementation if you did it differently.
I mean, my understanding is that first, the northbound is not going to do that. It's not going to send us a tag and prefix together within a rule. That is my understanding of the northbound behavior. But even if they, as I said, therefore we never thought about it. Thanks for pointing out. But even if they do, I think Prince, you can add those kind of notes in the implementation to say, okay, here's the requirement. If it has both that, then we'll separate that, right? So
yeah,
okay.
I will add to that design, Gohan. But like Gohan mentioned, like even if the northbound provides, we'll separate it to two different rules because we don't have a way to specify both tags and prefixes in one attribute list. That's making it complicated. So that's why we separated the tag and prefixes to two different attributes. And you're right. Like if in case we provide it like that, then it is an and operation, not an or operation.
Yes. Okay.
Another thing is that I believe what's missing from the design, since the SI API and northbound API are different, probably that's a good idea to provide an example how this translation will happen if it's not one-to-one mapping.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mary,
okay.
I think that's part of the the occasion HLD, right? So we'll describe,
Oh, so it's
on
a
the on this tag to describe what is the requirement here, right? So
can we eliminate the the fact that there's I think it's a problem to say if they're both provided, it has to be an and operation. I think that's a problem. I think it would be best to say the rule will either consist of tags or the rule will consist of a list of prefixes. If it's both, it'll be programmed as two rules.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
we will.
one. No, that one I think that, is asking for whether we can express that in the P4, right? So I don't know. That part I don't know. I need someone, maybe Marianne or someone, our P4 expert, to say whether that's doable or not, right? So.
Yeah, Gohan, the question is that basically, can we also modify or at least, update our, NorthBound reference example that we have, in which we are saying these are the kind of configuration that we can pass through NorthBound. And in that, if we explain how the rules are basically going to be communicated from the NorthBound down to the appliance or any device, that would also clarify how it's going to be structured, right? So can we do that, please?
Oh yeah, that one I think Prince promised to do that, right? So Prince, you will be working on this tag HOD, right? So how do we? What is the requirement for the NorthBound tag, and how do we actually translate into the site, right? So all these requirements you will generate, right? So.
Yeah, go on.
I have a question which the NorthBound API folks can answer. Suppose the NorthBound API only allowed tags and not direct list of IP prefixes. That seems to simplify the API and the understanding of this completely all throughout.
No, the NorthBound can have either tag or prefixes.
NorthBound could also just create a tag when it wants to add a list of IP prefixes. It could just say, "Oh, I'll just create a tag for it for this rule."
Yeah,
Right.
but that's not something in pipeline now. Yeah. So we are separating out the prefix and tags. But I think the point taken, like we'll clarify those, like if there is prefixes, then we don't expect tag, and if there are both specified, it will be two different rules. I think that should satisfy the.
I just made the suggestion in case that is acceptable, and it seems to simplify things all the way down. If it's not acceptable, that's fine.
Yeah.
One thing is that we consider the BMV2 P4 as a reference model, right? And then we have all these definitions in the HLD, and those may or may not be fully transformed into the reference model P4. But then we are deriving the SI APIs from the P4. So unless and until the reference model is exactly like the HLD definition, then the SI will not be current with the HLD definition. This is just a generic comment. I think, I wanted to mention this for some time. Maybe I have mentioned it earlier, but is it required at some point to hand modify the SI APIs like we do in SONiC based on our design in HLD, rather than always deriving the SI APIs from the P4?
Reshma, I think we at least put a stake in the ground and said, okay, we are going to have always, P4 as a single source of truth, and that is going to basically create an API. We are not going to hand modify it. For everything, we are going to create it, and then we have to agree upon it that we create it, and then that way we be completely uniform in our our implementation. So we understand P4 model can be a reference implementation. It's people can basically do it in some other ways, but at least the reference model, we should have an agreement upon that it is going to cover all the cases, right? Even in this case, if somebody wants to just expand and not have to have the tag carried all the way through into the hardware, then let that be, right? Let that be basically one way to do it. But then another way is to have some indirection, right? So have to have the definition of saying, okay, there is a tag. We will have the representation of a tag, and we will basically provide APIs to manipulate those tags. Right?
My comment is not related to this tag or anything like that. In general, we always say that, okay, BMV2 is a reference model. However, we are deriving the SI APIs from that reference model, right? There could be a lag in the reference model. when we are discussing the HLD and the features in the HLD, which are required, and that's why it has gone into the HLD. But then the API then will have lag too, if not completely miss, in some certain extreme cases, if that's, there's something to consider. Yeah.
Gohan, can I ask, I missed it. What did you need a P4 person to check?
No, I saw, that, whether we can express all in the ACL model is
Okay.
what being asked, but I don't know whether that's doable or not. So maybe that one can Marianne check and get back, right? But I think the main thing is that I think
Okay.
Prince will explain,
Yes, I got Prince's.
what was the translation, right? So
Yeah, I got that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll send that to Prince later. What I captured. Okay.
So I'm going to reiterate also, and Marianne, thanks for the email. I'm on PTO, so I will check that when I get back. The BMV2 model, if it's the model for the side generation, then again we still have the ECL rule problem where it generates an IP as opposed to prefix. It's orthogonal to the tags here. So I know there is a hidden flag. I think it's dash match, and I will check it out. But shouldn't the baseline generation of BMV2 be what generate the side API for the vendors? I don't feel like I should go down in the P4 and change the compile flag or set it up to hopefully get the proper API.
We did talk about that, like last time or the time before.
Right.
I can try and grab notes. Do you guys remember talking about that?
I brought it up last week again. So I'm like, maybe it would work. I gotta try it, but that should be the de facto. I don't know the reason why it's not, but it's been dragging on for quite a bit, so I'm not sure if there are real reasons for not being a prefix by default.
Trying to pull up my notes. That was from 412.
I guess. I know I brought it up.
Let me look. I don't think. Yeah, I don't think it was in those notes. I think it was the week before. Okay. Do you guys remember talking about that?
Yeah, so I think the main problem there is that CI pipeline is all based on the version without that flag. So if you want to change it, we need to do it in a way to not break the CI pipeline or do all the updates along the way.
I understand there's work there, but the base thing is when a vendor pulls dash repo and builds it, which is based on the BMV2 to get the SI APIs, that should be proper out the box, right?
But that's what I'm saying. Out of the box is the version that is working with CI pipeline.
Yeah, but what's defined for vendors should be what gets generated. It may be a lot of work and all that, but I think it needs to be done. Otherwise, it's not proper.
No, I agree. It needs to be done. It's just I didn't plan for it.
Okay. Can we pick this back up maybe when you come back from PTO, Vincent?
Well, I mean, we've talked about it long enough. I think it's clear what the problem is. How do we go about it? Do we file an issue? Actually, I could file an issue on the Dash repo, I suppose, right?
Okay.
To get it in the list.
Sure. That would be great.
So I just quickly wanted to mention a scaling question for the control plane, and the control plane could definitely do this in the NorthBound API, but it looks like in the current API, suppose you have some IP prefix that's in 100 tags. The NorthBound API caller wants to remove that IP prefix from one of those 100 tags, but leave it in the other 99. It looks like the way the caller has to do it is they have to look up and find out what are all the other 99, set the attribute of that IP prefix to have the list of 99 remaining tags it wants to be part of, omitting the 100th that it wanted to remove it from. That's required for remove it, even if you don't know what other tags. The NorthBound API will need to remember what all the tags that the IP prefix is part of and look them up and pass them all down every time it wants to remove it from one tag. That's acceptable, great. If that's not, something like what John Carney was talking about would be better.
Is John still on the call? Let me look for John.
This is a question for who wants to call this API. If they want to maintain the full tagged IP prefix mapping and every time they want to remove a prefix from one tag, look up all the other tags it's already part of and shoot those down in the API call, they're welcome to do that, but they have to do that in this API.
That is the OKG job, right? So, I mean, NorthBound doesn't have to do that.
Whoever's making the call to the set attribute that you talked about has to look that up.
Yeah, that's the org agent. That's org agent can maintain that mapping.
It's acceptable. That's great. I just wanted to point out the consequence.
Yeah, I think the API is not ideal for I don't think it's ideal that the SCI API, but I think we could deal with it. I mean, it's just it's up to the vendor to decide like how they internally maintain their database, right?
Yeah, with the Git, they still need to maintain that list as well too. So, but yeah, it's far from ideal, that's for sure.
Okay. So, did you guys have other PRs you wanted to talk about today? If not, I can give 15 minutes back. Okay. Anything else left on this topic then? I have a few action items to send out. Thanks for the thanks for the conversation on it. It was 45 minutes worth, so thanks, Vincent, for bringing it up, and John and Bud. If that's everything, I can end the call and upload the recording. We good for the day? Gohan, Prince, everyone?
Yeah.
Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks,
you.
Vincent, again. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Good conversation. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, honey, for the commentary, Reshma. Bye-bye. Marian, bye-bye.